Good evening, folks. It's Diamond with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project and Magnetic Reversal News, bringing you a magnetic excursion update Tuesday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, and Kilauea Volcano continues to erupt. Keep calm. It's boom time. And have a very Merry Christmas Eve. It's just hours from Christmas Day here in my time zone, and for many of you, it is already Christmas. And we wish you the best. It wasn't so good this morning as American Airlines says flights are resuming after all services were grounded. Christmas Eve travel plans across the U.S. were hit this morning by technology issues, which led to American Airlines briefly grounding all its flights. Hopefully you weren't affected by the grounding. Wintry mix wraps up in the D.C. area after an icy morning on Christmas Eve. And impact weather for Christmas Eve with icy conditions across Baltimore and into Philadelphia. Freezing rain, sleet, and snow was the culprit. And here is the full forecast. Pacific storms continue to impact the West. Severe thunderstorms forecast for Thursday in the South. A series of Pacific storm systems will continue to impact the Northwest U.S. into the coming weekend, with periods of gusty winds, high surf, low elevation rain, and heavy mountain snow. Severe thunderstorms will be possible on Thursday across central and east Texas, into western Louisiana, and possibly the Arklatex and southeast Oklahoma. Dense fog warnings across the central U.S., and heed the warnings, winter storm warnings and watches out for the Pacific Northwest and even all the way down into Nevada. Well, as Santa begins coming down the chimneys across the U.S., he's probably doing it right now. We've got heavy snow in the west and severe weather in eastern Texas moving into Louisiana. 3, 6, 9 hours, that should dissipate in the southeast, but there will be some severe storms overnight for Santa, as well as in the west, as this snow moves down into the Four Corners region for Christmas Day. It maybe brings us a flurry or two in the morning. Good news there. But by the day after Christmas, a heavy atmospheric river will push into the Pacific Northwest and literally bury Washington State and Oregon above 9,000 feet. And the second system right behind it will pummel again and again. The Pacific Northwest is going to be getting hit hard. What do I mean? Well, let's take a quick look at the total snowfall. It's quite epic. Here is the snow through the end of the year, January 1st, right there. The West has got 4 to 6 feet in all the high elevation areas of the Northern Rockies, the Cascades, even down into the Sierras. Just limited snow for the Northeast. And as we head into the new year, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, these models are far out, but the snow pattern does continue in earnest, which is good news for ski resorts and the basins. Seismic update. No quakes of note for real, just moderate activity worldwide, slight uptick in the west here, including some quakes in Nevada. And the mid-ocean ridge here up in the Greenland Sea near Svalbard. A couple of volcanoes to report on earlier today. As we did last night, we said the Kilauea volcano eruption halted, and it did for a limited period of time. But a new pulse of activity and new fountaining is now happening at the volcano, and we're going to bring that to you live as we're probably getting a little choppy on the audio. But you can see the volcano has not given its final breath, and Kilauea continues to fountain in epic glory. That's bad news for people living on the Big Island, as there's increased SO2 and a huge plume of it washing over Honolulu and other regions. And this is not good air to breathe, so heed the warnings. We also have Raung volcano, a new significant eruption today. You can see it blasting up there into the atmosphere. A new eruption took place at the volcano this morning, 9:30 local time, and a strong explosion generated an increasingly rising dense ash column reaching 5.3 kilometers. The ash plume propagated to the east, and the local volcanic observatory reported a semi-seismic signal with a maximum amplitude of 32 millimeters and a duration of 282 seconds. So quite a nice puff there from Raoul. A quick look over at space weather, and the 3-day geomagnetic forecast has been updated for geomagnetic storm on Christmas Day, as well as the day after Christmas. G1 geomagnetic storm is forecast. As you can see, 2 pulses of energy are forecast to be headed our way. A quick look over at telemetry on Christmas Eve shows nothing much happening. We've got the density slowly rising, plasma speed hovering at 500 kilometers per second, and really no change in the BZ or the phi angle. So we're waiting for something to arrive. The coronal mass ejection associated with the M9 solar flare earlier Monday morning was predicted to deliver a glancing blow by Christmas. And so that's what they're calling it. The 9.05 here is going to give us that G1 geomagnetic storm. And it was added for that date. Perhaps the gift of aurora will be possible for sky watchers at higher latitudes on Christmas Day. Hey, hey. Neanderthals may have mastered fire 270,000 years ago. Now, we know other groups of hominids were actually building buildings as early as 470,000 years ago. So the question, did Neanderthals master fire 270,000 years ago, is moot. We've probably been using fire for well over 500,000 years. Anthropology and archaeology just hasn't caught up. And it's true, NASA's Parker Solar Probe is celebrating Christmas with a record-smashing kiss of the sun. The only problem, it was nowhere near the sun. It was millions of kilometers away. But the daring NASA spacecraft made its closest ever approach to the sun at 6:53 a.m. EST on Christmas Eve. And there we can see an artist's representation of the Parker Solar Probe making that close approach. The spacecraft made a historic close approach to the sun, closer than any spacecraft ever before. The record-breaking feat was conducted by the Parker Solar Probe, which flew just 3.8 million miles away from the sun. If that's close by any, well, anyway, I do digress. Merry Christmas. And if you're thinking of changing to vegan, or if you're already vegan and wondering why you're always so tired and sick, check out this article. Vegan raw food influencer who ate only fruit dies of malnutrition. Yeah. It's almost impossible to get all the nutrients you need from fruits and vegetables. No matter how hard you try, many vegans can only do it by supplementing. And that's because human genetics are meant for eating meat. And that's how we've survived for millions of years. As a global hunger crisis deepens, as major nations skimp on aid, it has everything to do with, well, inflation, and countries just have huge deficits. Global hunger is rising, but total humanitarian aid from wealthy nations to the UN is also shrinking. The UN predicts at least 117 million will go without aid in 2025, and that means 100+ million people will be starving. Germany, a top UN humanitarian donor, is reducing aid funding as relief agencies fear possible cuts from top donors in the U.S. after Trump takes office. Of course, they want to blame everything on Trump. Now let's get back to the holiday season. Is Santa based on a psychedelic shaman? Well, let's go over some of the folklore. Many historians agree that the North American figure of Santa Claus can be traced back to a monk named Saint Nicholas of Myra, a bearded 4th century Greek Christian with a penchant for charitable giving. Saint Nick was presumably the basis for the Dutch Sinterklaas, the patron saint of children, who donned a big red cape and rode around on a white horse to visit children on the name day of St. Nicholas, the 6th of December. According to folklore, Sinterklaas carried a red book in which he recorded a child's behavior over the past year as having been good or naughty. Sinterklaas is said to have been slowly transformed into modern-day Santa by the 1700s Dutch immigrants in the New World. But maybe there's another story worth telling this season, one about a psychedelic mushroom-eating shaman from the Arctic. That's Matthew Salton, whose animated short film, Santa is a Psychedelic Mushroom, presents a different origin story entirely. It's a compelling narrative backed by Harvard professors, anthropologists, and even esteemed mycologists alike. And it bears an uncanny resemblance of the modern-day tradition of Santa Claus. But more obviously, when we read this account, it is probably an accumulation of all the folklore. Until just a few hundred years ago, the story goes, the indigenous Sami people of Lapland, a wintry region in northern Finland dense with conifer forests, would wait in their houses on the winter solstice to be visited by shamans. These shamans would perform healing rituals using the hallucinogenic mushroom Amanita muscaria, a red and white toadstool fungus that they considered holy. So holy, in fact, that the shamans dressed up like mushrooms for their visit. Wearing large red and white suits, the shamans would arrive at the front doors of houses and attempt to enter. However, many families were snowed in, and the healers were forced to drop down the chimney. They would act as conduits between the spirit and human world, bringing gifts of introspection that could solve the family's problems. Upon arrival, the healers were regaled with food. They would leave as they came on reindeer-drawn sleds. And that is a very mushroom Christmas, which we will link you below. And have a very Merry Christmas indeed. And that's a boom to knowledge. Please hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed, and hit the bell for more updates. We love each and every one of you. I hope you're spending time with friends or family, neighbors, or anyone that is reveling in the Christmas spirit. I know we had a great time today with our friends and family, and hopefully you did as well. And we'll see you soon. And that is a Merry Christmas Eve boom.